I was 10,000 kilometers away, but when my baby sister was betrayed, I struck back with a nuclear revenge that shattered them all. Okay, Reddit, this is going to be a long one. I, a 34-year-old male, need to share what's been happening because, honestly, I'm losing my mind here and could use some outside perspective. This whole mess started way back. So I guess I should explain the background first. I grew up in a pretty average suburban house outside Boston. My parents weren't terrible parents or anything, at least not at first. They both worked decent jobs, we went on regular family vacations, did the whole cookout thing in summer, normal family stuff. I was their only kid for 8 years, and things were actually pretty good. Then my brother Mason was born. Look, I know how this sounds. Trust me, I've spent enough time in therapy to know this isn't just typical older sibling jealousy. The day Mason came home, it was like someone flipped a switch, and I became invisible in my own house. I don't mean that in some dramatic teenager way. I mean my parents literally forgot about me half the time. For example, when I was in 6th grade, I spent 3 months building this crazy detailed solar system model for the science fair. I built everything from scratch, even programmed this little Arduino thing to make the planets move. The judges were so impressed, they gave me this special award for the math work. My parents didn't show up because Mason had t-ball practice. Not even a game, just practice. The living room walls were covered with Mason's participation ribbons, while my science fair trophy sat unopened on the mantel for a week before disappearing into the basement. My mom still has Mason's macaroni art from kindergarten framed in the kitchen, but she couldn't tell you where my high school diploma is. My dad was even worse about it. This one time, I had this huge robotics competition. My team had worked for months, and I was team captain. Dad promised he'd come. The morning of the competition, Mason decided he wanted to try baseball. Not even a real game, he just wanted to throw a ball around in the backyard. Guess who didn't make it to my competition? The car thing really showed their true colors though. When Mason turned 16, my parents bought him a brand new Honda Civic. Their reason? To boost his confidence. Meanwhile, when I turned 16, I had to get 3 part-time jobs just to save up for college because they were teaching me responsibility. I worked at the library in the morning, did math tutoring after school, and worked weekends at this computer repair shop. Mason totaled that Civic 3 months after getting it. They bought him another one. The thing about Mason is that he was a nightmare kid. The kind of kid other parents whispered about. He'd throw these massive tantrums if he didn't get his way, even as a teenager. He'd break things, scream at our parents, skip school, and they just made excuses for him. He's sensitive. He's just expressing himself. He's going through a phase. Meanwhile, I had to be perfect. Any grade less than an A+, and my mom would make these little comments about how maybe you're spreading yourself too thin. If I ever showed any frustration or anger, I was being difficult and making Mason upset. The crazy thing is, for years I actually believed there was something wrong with me. Like maybe if I was just a better son, they'd notice me too. I spent so much time trying to get their attention, but nothing worked. I didn't realize how bad it was until I got to college and saw how other families treated each other, how my roommates' parents would call just to check in, how my friends' families would celebrate all their kids' achievements. But the best part about college? The distance. I barely went home except for major holidays, and even then, I'd make excuses to leave early. Dad would make these guilt trip comments like, "Mason really misses his big brother," but I noticed Mason never actually called or texted unless he needed money for some business idea. By junior year, I was killing it academically and had 3 papers published. The department head recommended me for this exchange program in South Korea. 6 months at Seoul National University, working on this cutting-edge AI project. My parents didn't even notice I was leaving the country until I was already gone. They were too busy dealing with Mason's latest drama. He'd gotten kicked out of his 3rd community college for not attending classes. Those 6 months in Seoul changed everything. So many opportunities, so much innovation, plus nobody knew me as Mason's brother or the quiet one. I was just me, When my exchange program ended, a startup offered me a full-time position for after graduation. The salary was crazy good, and they'd handle my visa and everything. I said yes without even thinking twice. I graduated top of my class, landed offers from major companies, and still, my parents skipped my graduation because Mason had a GameStop interview. But I think I stopped caring anymore. Moving to Seoul was the best decision I ever made. Within 3 years, I was leading projects and finally living life on my own terms. My parents barely noticed. The few times they called, it was always about Mason's latest crisis. He'd gotten fired again. He'd borrowed money from the wrong people. He'd gotten some girl pregnant. Turns out he lied about that one. The girl had to get a restraining order against him when he wouldn't leave her alone. Then I met Rachel. Man, I still remember exactly how it happened. I was at this tiny coffee shop in Hongdae, trying to explain in my broken Korean why my credit card wasn't working. She stepped in to translate, saved me from completely embarrassing myself. Turned out, she was teaching English at an international school nearby. Rachel was different from anyone I'd ever met. She actually listened when I talked, asked questions about my work, and understood the answers. When I told her about some new code I was working on, she'd get excited with me instead of zoning out. Plus, she had her own life, her own goals. She wasn't looking for someone to fix her problems, she was looking for a partner. We dated for 2 years before I proposed. The wedding was small but perfect. Just our friends and her family. My parents said they couldn't come because Mason needed them at home. He'd gotten into some trouble with credit card fraud or something. Honestly, I was relieved they weren't there. Life was good. You know, really good. I was successful at work, happily married, living in a cool city. Rachel and I traveled around Asia on weekends, tried weird foods, learned new things together. I thought I'd finally escaped all the family drama. Then my company announced they were opening a new office in Boston. They wanted me to head it up. Triple my salary, full relocation package, the works. Rachel was excited about moving to the States, said it would be an adventure. I wasn't really thrilled to go back home, but I thought enough time had passed that maybe things with my family would be different. When we landed in Boston, my mom texted, asking if we'd arrived safely. I thought maybe she was finally showing some interest in my life. Nope, she just wanted to tell me Mason had moved back to Boston too. Apparently, his business ventures in California didn't work out. By business ventures, I mean he'd convinced some girl's wealthy parents to invest in his tech startup. The startup was just a badly designed website that never launched. The girl's parents threatened legal action when they found out he'd spent their money on fancy cars and expensive restaurants. Typical Mason. Rachel and I settled into a nice place in Cambridge, landed jobs, and everything was finally coming together. Then Mason started showing up everywhere. First, it was just random texts. Hey big bro, heard you're back in town. Then emails about wanting to reconnect, saying he'd grown up and changed. He wrote this long message about how therapy had helped him understand his past mistakes. Said he wanted to be a real brother for once. I ignored him for 2 weeks. Then he found out where I worked. He showed up in the lobby one day, telling the receptionist he had a lunch date with me. Luckily, security checked with me first. But then he waited outside the building for 3 hours. My team could see him from our office windows, just standing there like some creepy statue. Rachel thought I was being too harsh. He's trying to make amends, she said. Everyone deserves a second chance. She didn't know about the restraining orders or the money stuff. I hadn't told her because, honestly, I was embarrassed. Who wants to admit their brother is basically a professional scammer? But Mason was clever. He'd always been good at manipulating people. He started sending Rachel these long emotional messages about how much he regretted not being a better brother, how proud he was of my success, how he just wanted to be part of our lives. Rachel kept pushing me to give him a chance. He seems sincere, she'd say. People can change. I wasn't buying it, but she was determined to play peacemaker. Then, without telling me, she invited him over for dinner. I walked in after work, exhausted, only to find Mason sitting in my living room like he belonged there. The audacity! My stomach dropped, and for a second, I thought I'd lost my mind. Had I invited him and forgotten? No, this was Rachel's doing. I pulled her aside in the kitchen, keeping my voice low but firm. You invited him here without asking me? She sighed, crossing her arms. I just thought if you actually talked, maybe you'd see he's trying. I brushed it off at that moment. I didn't want to start a conflict with Rachel in front of him, and a small part of me wondered, what if he really had changed? Back in the living room, Mason put on a damn Oscar-worthy performance. He brought an expensive gift, probably bought with someone else's money, asked all the right questions about my work, pretended to care about our life in Korea. Hell, he even managed to fake some tears while apologizing for our childhood, acting like the lost brother who just wanted redemption. After that dinner, he started coming around more often, always when I was at work, just keeping Rachel company, he'd say. She's still adjusting to Boston, and I know what it's like to feel lonely in a new city. Looking back, I should have seen what was happening, the signs were all there. But I was so focused on my new job, setting up the office, hiring staff, that I missed them. Then, after 2 months or so, I had to go back to Seoul for a week. The company needed me to train my replacement and transfer some sensitive projects. Rachel insisted she'd be fine. Mason can help me finish unpacking, she said. He knows the city better than I do. I didn't want to seem controlling. Rachel was an adult, capable of making her own decisions, and Mason was acting so normal. Still, something felt off. I asked our neighbors to keep an eye on the house, installed some security cameras, made sure Rachel had all the emergency numbers. The week in Seoul was intense. 14-hour days, endless meetings, barely time to sleep. Rachel's messages became shorter, less frequent. She blamed the time difference, said she was busy setting up her classroom for the new school year. Mason sent me updates too. Pictures of them out at local restaurants, showing sis-in-law the best spots in town, photos at the museum, the park, shopping downtown. But they weren't alone. My parents were always with them, smiling like this was some wholesome family outing. Every message came with a long, over-the-top text about how grateful he was that I'd given him another chance, how he finally understood what family meant. With my parents there, it should have felt normal, but something about it still didn't sit right with me. When I finally came back from Seoul, we had a family dinner. We were all sitting around the dinner table, me, Rachel, and my parents. It was one of those rare family dinners where things actually felt normal, and for once, Mason wasn't the center of attention. Then Rachel put down her fork, took a deep breath and said, "I'm pregnant." My heart nearly burst. We had been talking about starting a family, and now it was happening. My parents gasped in excitement, Mom already rambling about baby names, Dad clapping me on the back. But Mason, he didn't look surprised. He just sat there, smiling this weird little smile before saying, "This family is getting bigger in all the best ways." Something about it made my stomach turn. I didn't know why at the time, but looking back, that was the moment everything started falling apart. After the pregnancy announcement, Mason's behavior took a turn for the bizarre. At first I thought he was just overly excited, but then he started showing up, uninvited more, constantly. Every other day, there he was, acting like he had some unspoken right to be involved. "Gotta check on my favorite sister-in-law," he'd say, grinning like he belonged there. Then came the comments, little things that felt off. "Our baby's going to be so strong already," he'd say, way too casually. Crazy how connected I feel to this whole thing. The way he talked about it wasn't just enthusiasm, it was possessive. Like he saw himself as more than just an uncle. I thought he was just being his usual annoying self, but then little things started adding up, things I couldn't ignore. I mentioned it to Rachel, how Mason seemed a little too involved. "It's weird, right?" I said, expecting her to agree. Instead, she sighed, like I was exhausting her. "You're being paranoid. Mason's just happy for us. Happy for us or happy for you?" She rolled her eyes, brushing past me into the kitchen. "God, you always think the worst of people. He's trying to be better, and you're looking for reasons to push him away." That should have been my warning, but I let it go, thought maybe I was overthinking it. One night, I got home late from work and noticed the front door was unlocked. I was sure I had locked it that morning, but I figured maybe Rachel had just forgotten after taking out the trash or something. Still, it nagged at me, so I pulled up the security camera feed to check if anything was off. That's when I saw the error message. Error with storage settings. The system wasn't recording anymore. The past week's footage was gone. That stopped me cold. I knew those cameras were set up right, and more importantly, I had them automatically backing up to cloud storage. Something I hadn't told anyone, not even Rachel. I started noticing other little things too, like how Rachel always put her phone face down now, or how she'd suddenly end calls when I walked into the room, or how Mason seemed to know exactly what was in our fridge without ever asking. One night, I couldn't sleep, just lay there thinking about all these weird things happening. Rachel was sleeping next to me, looking so peaceful. The pregnancy was making her tired all the time now. That's when I remembered the cloud backup for the security cameras. I got up, went to my home office and logged into the cloud storage account. There were hundreds of saved clips. I started with the week I was in Seoul. First clip, Mason coming over right after I left for the airport. Nothing weird there, Rachel had said he was helping her unpack. Second clip, Mason and Rachel sitting really close on the couch watching a movie. Still could be innocent. Third clip, Mason kissing Rachel in our kitchen. That's when I started shaking. The clips showed everything. Mason coming over every single day while I was gone, them getting closer and closer, Rachel letting him in late at night. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room, like I was watching my worst nightmare play out in real time. Every buried fear, every doubt I'd tried to push aside, they were all true. Mason wasn't just pushing boundaries, he had bulldozed right through them, straight into my home, my marriage, my life. And Rachel, she let him, welcomed him in like it was normal. The worst part wasn't just the betrayal itself, it was how casual they were about it. Like they'd done this before. They'd hang out in the kitchen, cook together, watch TV on our couch. Mason would bring groceries, like he lived there. There was this one clip that really got me. They were in the kitchen, and Mason was standing way too close to Rachel. She was laughing at something he said, and he just reached out and touched her face. The kind of touch that tells you everything you need to know. Rachel didn't pull away, she smiled at him, like she used to smile at me. I watched a week's worth of footage in one night. Saw them getting closer and closer, saw Mason basically moving in while I was gone, saw Rachel acting totally different with him than she did with me. The cameras don't record inside the bedrooms, I'm not that paranoid. But the hallway camera caught enough, Mason going into our bedroom with Rachel, coming out hours later. I saved all the footage to a secure drive, made copies, backed everything up. The enraged guy in me knew I needed proof, the husband in me wanted to throw up. I kept telling myself maybe I was seeing things wrong, maybe there was some explanation. But deep down, I knew. My brother and my wife, in my house, in my bed, while I was working my ass off in Seoul to give us a better life. The morning after watching all that footage, I called in sick to work. I couldn't sleep anyway, just sat there in my home office, staring at the wall until Rachel woke up. She came in, all cheerful, talking about prenatal vitamins and doctor appointments, acting like everything was normal, like she hadn't spent the last week letting my brother into our home. I didn't yell, I just opened my laptop and played one of the videos, the one where they're in the kitchen and Mason's got his hands all over her. Rachel's face went white. She started crying, saying she could explain, that it wasn't what it looked like. Then she switched to the classic cheater's playbook. We didn't mean for this to happen. It just happened. Mason really gets me, like somehow that makes it okay. I let out a short, bitter laugh. Mason gets you? Mason, the guy who's never held down a job longer than 6 months, the guy who scams people for a living? That's who gets you? Her lip trembled, but she didn't deny it. I shook my head, my voice tight with anger. I gave you everything, Rachel. I built a life for us. I worked my ass off so we could have a future, so our kid could have a future. You never had to worry about rent, about food, about anything. I supported your career. I traveled halfway across the world with you. I trusted you, and you throw it all away for him? Her eyes welled up, but I wasn't done. I texted Mason to come over, no explanations, no warnings, just a simple, we need to talk. Now, he showed up, like he always did, that smug grin on his face, probably thinking Rachel hadn't told me yet, that I was still in the dark, still playing the fool. That grin died the second he stepped inside and saw the laptop open, footage playing frame by frame, exposing every single one of his lies. His eyes flicked to the screen, then back to me. His entire body stiffened, but Mason, ever the manipulator, tried to spin it immediately. Bro, you gotta understand. Since when? I cut him off, my voice steady, sharp. How long has this been going on? Rachel was already crying. I ignored her. I wasn't done with Mason. He was scrambling, trying to figure out the angle that would save him. It just happened, man. We didn't plan this. It wasn't like that. Rachel finally found her voice, weak and shaking. Please, you have to understand, we didn't mean to hurt you. I let out a sharp laugh. You let my brother into our home. You let him into our bed. You let him pretend to be me while I was gone. But yeah, sure, tell me how you didn't mean it. Mason's voice dropped, his expression twisting into something almost defensive. Look, bro, you're always working, always focused on career. Rachel was lonely. She needed someone who could be there for her, and then he had the audacity to say, maybe if you'd been a better husband, this wouldn't have happened. I swear, my entire body locked in place, fighting the urge to throw him through the nearest wall. Is that what you tell yourself to sleep at night? That this is somehow my fault? That you didn't have a choice but to act like a goddamn parasite? Rachel sobbed harder. Please, we need to think about the baby. I turned my head so fast she flinched. Whose baby is this? Her face crumpled, like she hadn't even considered I'd ask. It's yours, she choked out. I swear, you swear? I gave her a look so cold it could have frozen the entire room. Like you swore I was the only one? Like you swore Mason was just family? She didn't answer because she couldn't. Mason, desperate now, come on man, we're all family, we can figure this out. That was it, that was the moment something inside me snapped. I took another step toward him, closing the distance until I was right in his face. Let me make something very, very clear to you, Mason. You are not my family, you are not my brother, you are nothing to me. He opened his mouth but I kept going. You crossed a line you can't come back from, and if this baby isn't mine, I leaned in. Then you better run. You better pack up whatever scam you've got going and get the hell out of my city. Because if I ever see you again, if you so much as breathe near me or this house, I will make sure you regret it for the rest of your miserable life. Mason froze. For the first time in his life he looked genuinely afraid. Rachel whimpered, please, let's just… I cut her off. Both of you, get out. Rachel did something I wasn't expecting. She reached for my hands, gripping them like I was her last lifeline. Please, we can fix this. We were both lost. I yanked my hands away so fast she nearly fell forward. I wasn't lost, Rachel. You were lost, and you let my brother guide you straight into hell. It was a mistake, she whispered. A horrible mistake. Yeah, no kidding. She inhaled sharply and then, like clockwork, flipped the script. Are you really going to punish our child for this? Her voice broke at just the right moment, like she'd rehearsed it. Are you seriously going to be one of those dads, the kind who lets their own bitterness ruin their family? Don't even try that on me. He needs both of us? No, he needs one parent who isn't a liar and a cheat. They kept talking, but I didn't have the energy to argue anymore. I kept urging them to get out, and as soon as they were gone, I grabbed my phone and called my parents, thinking finally they'd see Mason for who he really was. I should have known better. My mom's first words, "Oh honey, you must have done something to push Rachel away." I felt like I'd been sucker punched. Then she kept going, because apparently that wasn't enough. Mason needs a good woman in his life, and Rachel clearly makes him happy. For a second, I genuinely thought I was hallucinating. Are you actually hearing yourself right now? Sweetheart, you've always been so focused on work. Maybe this was a sign that Rachel needed more from you. I swear, I almost dropped my phone. I thought I'd misheard, thought maybe there was some shred of sanity left in this family, but no, they were really standing behind him. My dad was even worse, started talking about how Mason's finally found his path, and how I should be the bigger person, and help them out financially until Mason gets established. Like I'm supposed to bankroll the people who betrayed me. They even started telling family members that I was emotionally abusive and controlling because I had security cameras in my own house, saying I drove Rachel away with my cold personality, that Mason was just being a supportive brother and things got complicated. That's when I knew I was done. Done with Mason, done with my parents, done with all of it. I called a lawyer that afternoon, found a good one who specialized in cases with proof of infidelity. I told them I had everything documented, every visit, every lie, every betrayal. And I filed for divorce. But my parents weren't done trying to destroy what was left of my life. A week after I filed for divorce, they hit me with a lawsuit, demanding financial support for both Mason and Rachel. Their argument? That I had a familial obligation to support my brother and pregnant wife during this difficult transition period. They wanted me to pay Mason's rent, cover Rachel's living expenses, and even fund Mason's latest business venture. The audacity was breathtaking. What they didn't know was that I'd been planning my comeback meticulously. While they were busy trying to paint me as the villain, I'd been working to build an airtight case, not just against Rachel for the divorce, but against Mason for his years of fraud and manipulation. With the help of my lawyer, we contacted every single person Mason had scammed in the past 5 years, found his victims through social media, online forums, and court records. My lawyer helped them file a class action lawsuit against him, complete with documented evidence of his schemes. The civil suit hit him like a freight train. just as he was trying to convince Rachel they had a future together. Then we dug deeper into their affair. Turned out Rachel hadn't just betrayed me, she'd been helping Mason access our joint accounts. My lawyer found transfers, suspicious purchases, cash withdrawals that coincided with Mason's visits. We froze all the accounts immediately and reported the suspicious activity to the bank's fraud department. While this was happening, my parents were still pushing their lawsuit, demanding I pay $5,000 monthly for Mason's basic needs and another $3,000 for Rachel's expenses. They even had the nerve to request $50,000 for Mason's new startup, all before anyone knew if the baby was even mine. The court date for their financial demands came exactly when I wanted it to, as my parents sat there smugly confident in their righteousness. My lawyer unleashed our counterattack. We presented evidence of Mason's ongoing fraud schemes, showed how my parents had enabled and covered up his crimes for years, revealed bank statements proving they'd helped him hide money from previous victims. The judge ordered an investigation into their potential role in Mason's fraudulent activities. Their faces went from smug to terrified in seconds as they realized they'd walked right into our trap. Rachel wasn't spared either. The evidence of her complicity in Mason's financial schemes destroyed her credibility. The school board launched an ethics investigation when they discovered she'd been helping Mason target wealthy parents with his investment scams. Her teaching career imploded overnight. Mason's house of cards collapsed spectacularly. Through investigation, former victims came forward, his current scams were exposed, and his reputation was destroyed. No one would trust him with $1, let alone invest in his schemes. He tried fleeing to Florida, but his accounts were frozen, his credit was ruined, and he had nowhere to turn. And every time my parents or Rachel's lawyer tried to paint me as controlling or abusive because of the security cameras, it just made them look worse. The evidence showed I'd installed them for home security while traveling, not surveillance. Their attempts to twist it backfired, making them appear desperate and dishonest. But I wasn't done. I needed to know whose baby this was. By the time we got to the paternity test hearing, Mason was facing multiple investigations. Rachel was unemployed and facing potential criminal charges for financial complicity, and my parents were drowning in legal fees from their failed lawsuit. Their perfect little world had crumbled, and I hadn't even had to get my hands dirty, just let the law do its work. As I waited for the paternity test results, I realized I didn't even care anymore about their destruction. I was focused on the future. My future. And possibly my child's future. If this baby turned out to be mine, I was ready to fight for full custody, and thanks to our careful documentation of everything, I was in the perfect position to win. I will update you guys about it all once everything clears out. Final update. Hey Reddit, it's been a wild couple of weeks since my last update and I need to get this off my chest. Buckle up, because this story somehow got even crazier. Remember how I mentioned the paternity test was pending? Well, it came back, I am the father. When Sarah, my lawyer, called with the results, I had to sit down. It's like life has a sick sense of humor, you know? The one thing that could make this mess even more complicated actually happened. But here's where it gets interesting. The day after we got the results, Rachel showed up at my door, demanding I drop all legal proceedings because family should stick together. The audacity of this woman. She brought Mason with her, and they tried to pitch me some BS about co-parenting as a modern family. Turns out, they're completely broke after their accounts got frozen, and they were hoping to move into my house.
Yeah, you read that right.
The best part? They recorded the whole conversation, thinking they could use it against me somehow. Except they forgot about one tiny detail. My security system records audio too. So now I have crystal clear footage of them attempting to extort me and admitting to several other schemes they've been running. Sarah says this is like Christmas came early for our case. And Mason's schemes? Well, karma hit fast. He tried scamming some investors in Florida. Except one of them turned out to be an undercover FBI agent. My parents had to sell their vacation home to bail him out. They're still insisting he's just misunderstood, and that I should help him get back on his feet. Rachel's life is imploding spectacularly too. Remember that school board investigation? They found evidence she was using her position as a teacher to get parents' financial information from Mason's scams. She's now facing an investigation from the Department of Education, and several parents are filing civil suits. The cherry on top, my parents tried to organize a family intervention at their church, telling everyone I was mentally unstable and needed help. They invited Rachel's whole family and some church elders. What they didn't know was that Sarah had already spoken with the church leadership about Mason's elderly scam victims, many of whom were church members. The whole thing backfired beautifully, and now they're basically social pariahs in their own community. To those asking, no, I haven't forgiven them, and no, I don't plan to. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. The baby deserves better than their toxic influence. I'll post one final update after the little guy arrives, but for now, I need to focus on the future. The past few months have taught me that family isn't about blood, it's about who stands by you when everything falls apart. Thanks again, Reddit. Your support has meant more than you know.